Mantids. So I'm making this little video for the people in the Discord. How's it going? Let me share this quick because I have a friend or two that are gonna listen in, so they can help me. 1 second, sorry. There we go. Okay, sweet. So I sent a link for a couple friends to watch this so they can help me. Anyway, so welcome to the Discord. So a lot of us are here from Palm Street. So basically, Jason and I run Moonlight Mantids, and we run live streams through a platform called Palm Street, where people can buy and sell. Mostly it was plants, I think, originally. And we managed to get on there, and with the people watching there, basically we became friends, not just acquaintances on that platform. And our good friend Anna, who has a lot of experience running Discords and also has like a administrative sort of background. Anyway, she offered, once we all became closer in our little following, our little community of Mantis people on Palm Street, sort of created, she offered to create this Discord, which you're all standing in. Thanks to Anna, who owns and runs that Discord. But the Discord's called Moonlight Mantids, after the Palm Street show and all the friends that have gathered there and Mantis fans. So essentially, you guys have made it here. I think some of you from other platforms, potentially, and then another Discord or two. And it seems like you guys kind of missed out on the whole Palm Street camaraderie that has all led us to become friends here in this Discord. That's how we all know each other. We spend a lot of time together. We've had a million conversations together, VC chats, live streams, all that stuff. So I've been, I'll tell you about myself. Moonlight Mantids, the Discord, and the society that runs within that Discord. It's our community is not the society, but the society is a club that we have that goes on the side. So I'm Kevin. I've been working with insects my whole life. I studied them at UW, and I wanted to be an entomologist and work with only mantids. I was told basically though that really wasn't possible, and most of the work done on mantids or Dickeypetra, that group of insects, was basically like there was no work in that. Most of the work that's been done have been done by like bundergents, you know, rich children who could play with insects because their parents sponsored them, or volunteer or randomized random work. Basically academic papers here and there where they could be afforded the time and energy and funding for that type of work. Most of it's voluntary, but there's a lot of random peer review, and that's pretty much all we have. Not much is known about mantids scientifically for that reason, because no company is going to essentially pay somebody to study them. Why? They're not a plant pest. They're not a house pest. They are not poisonous. So like if your dog and your cat can eat them, or a bird, and they're not going to die. And they are not poison. They're not venomous, right? They're not going to bite or sting you. So there's no anti-venom. There's like no reason at all to study mantids. They're like completely benign. So, something about them too, and I'll mention quick too, is, they are an opportunistic, cannibalistic, predatory insect, right? So basically, what that means is they eat, whatever's most prevalent in that environment, especially just even each other. They have a normal feeding behavior, which means for normal predatory feeding behavior, which means they eat anything that's their size or smaller. But they also exhibit and some predators do exhibit abnormal feeding behavior. There's like two kinds, right? And that's where they feed on things that are larger than themselves. Sometimes you'll see them like hummingbirds or something crazy like that, and it's really gut-wrenching when you see that stuff. But that's abnormal feeding behavior, and mantids kind of have both. Jumping spiders seem to tackle bigger things too, and that's kind of cute to watch, but they are not going to eat hummingbirds. So anyway, I go off on tangents a lot. Something you'd know from like Palm Street if that's where you hung out with us. Anyway, so the Discord was started as a place for what we call our homies to hang out and, you know, talk about our mantids and hang out and play games or whatever. A lot of it is Mantis enthusiasts, newcomers, some more advanced hobbyists are coming in, which is really nice to see. But we are seeing with all of that that there's a lot of you guys that don't really know what we're about, or like how do they know each other, or what does this exist? What's Moonlight Mantids? I don't even know who that is, all that stuff. So I'm gonna fill you in because you have a lot of questions, and it seems like there's been some stuff going on in the rumor mill, and I'm gonna clear it up. First and foremost, since you haven't been privy to the information on Palm Street, I've been keeping Mantids and running Moonlight Mantids for 16 years. I'm a mailman. So, but I moonlight in Mantids, hence the name. And I've been doing so since 2010, especially after I was told by a professor that I would never be paid as a biologist to work on Mantids. I would have to become a professor myself and then teach about things like Mantids. And then I would have maybe some part-time work after working full-time to work on like research projects with my grad students or undergraduate students. And that's basically what it'd be like to be a Mantis biologist. Wouldn't really be a thing. It'd be academic, and it would be for things like prestige and peer review. And I was like, well, that's really depressing. So I'm going to try to prove you wrong and do what I want. I get to be outside all day, and I collect bugs like crazy, which I love. And then also I raise mantids. Anyway, so you'll hear some things that we talk about. One thing that we've been addressing or talking about is like the inbreeding of mantids in captivity. Like mantids can be inbred. We're seeing a lot of like weird pushback for that. We're not saying you can't, and that's a very generalist blanket statement to say that's something that I say that is what I am or am not doing, or saying or teaching. But what I am saying, if you're listening and you care to learn, let's go from the beginning on just that one subject, right? Because the rumor mill doesn't know anything. But one-on-one, we can learn a lot from each other. And it happens all the time that I learn something new, especially from my new friends. So here we go. When we're keeping a reptile, pet, insect, or bird, maybe, what you want to do is mimic, if you can, its natural environment. That means like its diet, the heat, the lighting, the humidity, its requirements for hydration. All these things are really important. So what we do is we look at what they do in nature, right? And we replicate that in captivity, right? So with mantids, we're pretty good. We're getting there. Like it's in its infancy still. We're learning a lot. There's a lot of ways people are saying to do things and not do things. Something to know about that is we're in different climates. All of us are in completely different climates. We all have different means. Not everyone has glass tanks with sprayers and nozzles and all that cool doodads and stuff and all the fancy measuring equipment. Some of us just have like solo cups, right? So like we all have different means, materials, methods. We live in different climates. And with ectotherms, quite often, it doesn't really matter. You can't say to someone, hey, keep them like this. This is how you should do it. Well, that's wrong, right? Because you're not in their climate. You're not in their environment. You don't even know what part of their house it's in. I'm in my basement, right? I could have it in my upstairs of my house. Like we all know in the summertime, the upstairs of your house is super hot. The basement's the coldest place in your house. Like there's different factors to all of this. And you would be shocked, and I hope by now, if you're an insect invertebrate enthusiast, you know how much that attributes to the variation that we see in what's happening while we're raising them. Sometimes we ask for advice on that, or we get some information from each other when we do that, but there's no right or wrong way. There's literally just a massive variance in the places that we live, the places that we keep them, and our means. So that's something to keep in mind, is we're all doing things very, very differently. Beyond that, what was I going to say? Oh my God, I lost my train of thought. This happens all the time. I have ADHD really bad. And it's late. I've been walking all day, and I had to make this video so I could talk to my new friends. But anyway, so we've all been keeping them like differently, right? Oh gosh, I'm stuck. Babe, do you know what I was saying? I don't know. Melinda, my friend, or Diane, what was I saying? I can't remember. Text me. Oh, it totally escaped me. Before that, oh, the inbreeding thing. Oh my gosh, that took so long. I'm really tired, but you know, my community is important to me, so I'm gonna put the work in. Sorry about that. It's the inbreeding thing that we talked about. So when we look at something in nature, right, we try to then, when we bring it in captivity, replicate what the requirements were in nature. So sometimes we ask for advice on how we do that, but then also you have to factor in things like our means, yeah, thank you. Now I got the message. Our means, what we're doing, how we're doing it, um, and the different climates that we have it in. So what does that have to do with inbreeding? Well, when it comes to reproduction, it's also super important to look at what's happening naturally, right? So some things that we've seen is, hey, that person over there said, oh, you can't inbreed these mantids, blah, 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 blah. I've been doing mine for years, and it's totally fine. There has been no adverse effects. And they're saying like, oh, yeah, there's no evidence to prove that there isn't. Well, that's not what I'm saying. It's not what I've ever said. What I'm saying is that let's look at it from a natural perspective. And something that we know happens in the wild is sometimes they manage to inbreed, right? So sometimes they inbreed, they outbreed, inbreed. It happens, right? But something we know doesn't happen in the wild, right, is that the siblings meet only each other and inbreed, ooth to ooth, sibling to sibling, endlessly. That doesn't happen, okay? So being that that's not the case in the wild, it shouldn't be the case in captivity. And that should make sense, right? So let's talk about why it's important for a population of anything, let's say mantids, to want a more diverse genetic like gene pool, right? If you know about like evolution and biology, right, and you should know that the more diverse that a gene pool is, the more able that species is able to adapt. All right. So if they have a very limited or very small gene pool, it's okay. But the thing is, that makes them very susceptible to things like disease, genetic deformities, like not being able to adapt to certain climates or environments. That reigns true to captive conditions as well. So the thing is, we know for one, it's not happening sibling to sibling in nature. So why should we try to why wouldn't we also try to replicate what's happening out there if we have the means to, which would give us a more diverse genetic stock in captivity, which would mean that they are more likely or more able to adapt, have a more wider range and variety of shapes and sizes within that gene pool, which is okay. We're not talking about breeding outside locale specifics, but specifically something that happens in biology all the time is conservation reproduction, where we're working with like a limited gene pool. The California condor, the black-footed ferret is one I like to talk about a lot. They have been brought back from the brink of extinction, was where they took a scientific conservation formula, and what they did is they created a viable gene pool from the existing one. So obviously, yes, initially they were fairly inbred and there wasn't much they could do about it, but they took healthy individuals, just like with natural selection, and they built an existing gene pool, because the more individuals you have, the greater the gene pool. And all we're trying to do is not breed them as close as we, as close as they could be. We're trying to just outbreed from there. Or it happens all the time in conservation. All we have to do that is track the bloodlines. So we created something called the batch system. I created it, and it's what I use to track the batches or the different hatches of each mantis with some cute little numbers that also give us some interesting information. And we use that as a baseline, right? Why are we tracking these? Well, I don't want to breed sibling to sibling, ooth to ooth to ooth to ooth. Now, one, I want a more diverse genetic stock. Why? Because in my time in doing mantids and raising them, I've seen a few hundred species come in and out of trade. What sucks about that is, excuse my language, there's specimens that have come into captivity. We were lucky enough to somehow find them in the I don't even know how they got here in the US, and we have them in our hands and they're ours and it's great and we can work with them. And then something goes wrong and they crash and there's no more, and that species isn't seen again. Here's the thing, like, we're working, and what I preach is keeping them in trade, which we don't know what their status is in the wild. We don't know how they got here and the way we got here, but we're lucky enough to have them. So for that reason, we should work really hard together to keep them here. That being said, in order to do that, we're going to have to act sustainably, right? So we're going to take what we know about, a healthy gene pool that is more diverse and therefore more able to adapt, whether that's in captivity or not, and more diverse, right? So, and we're going to, once we get in some specimens, all we're trying to do with this batch system and tracking whatever we can about their genealogy, it's just good note keeping. We're trying to make sure that whatever stock comes in, we're going to pretend as if it's the only bloodline we're going to have, because in a lot of cases it is. So initially they are going to be inbred. They will be ooth to ooth, like sibling to sibling. But after that first generation, you have options, right? So you got your sibling, you got your ooth, you hatch some, and you got like, 4, 5, 8 adults. You breed them together. You got, this female number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. They were all initially inbred once, right? From there, as long as we write down where the babies came from each female, right? We can then take a baby from this female, a male or female, and a male or female from this one over here and breed them. Are they siblings? No, they're not siblings anymore, right? Not exactly, though the gene pool is very limited. It is better than what it was. And the generation after that, and the generation after that. See how conservation formulas for for reproduction work? We outbreed from there. And all we have to do that is document the batches, separate the nymph, track that. It's just some simple note keeping. I can do it with paper and a pencil. So what we talk about is not, inbreeding is bad. Well, there's line breeding, which is breeding for specific desirable traits, which is something human beings have always done. Like, I like this puppy, it's white, or I like this puppy, it's dark brown, or whatever. This one's got blue eyes. We tend to breed for the traits we find more desirable. Also, we breed things too because we're curious. This year I produced, in 2025, I produced 2,400 apicallus flower mantids. And I found, I think it was like 4 or 5 individuals that were turquoise. So the cool thing about that is they weren't just green on their lines. For some reason, they had like turquoise coloring, and it popped up around the L4 and L5 stage. Now I keep all my mantids in the exact same setup, in the exact same conditions, generation after generation, and I'm raising them out as best I can, but it does sometimes, we adjust things as we learn and as we grow, right? But these oddballs that come out, we're trying to see if we can reproduce them again. So these turquoise weird apicallus that I have, I'm going to breed those together. That's line breeding. Of course, those will be inbred. So I'm inbreeding to see if another trait can be proven out, which means that, they say it all the time, like in the reptile trade too, if we're going to prove something out, is that we're going to see if it can be, the father and the mother, and then when they reproduce and they have more of the offspring, like we're trying to see if that can be passed on genetically, from parent to offspring. So when we're talking about things like morphs and colors and mantids too, that can be a little bit touchy, because there was a really cool paper that was published a while ago, and from what I heard from it, I read it and I thought it was great, but I saw something about it where people were saying, oh my God, it says here that mantids coloration can be influenced by things like the, spectrum lighting or this or that, right? So people read that, and it was funny because the people that couldn't, I guess, comprehend it or be able to digest the information in a way that was more peer-to-peer, they didn't have the aptitude for it quite. So when they read that, in their mind, I feel like they read that and said, mantids are only influenced by their environment externally and things like spectrum lighting and some of the experiments they did to show that they can vary some of the coloration in the mantids. Now, I don't know why this happens a lot of times, but people draw a hard line in the sand to say it's one or the other. What we think we know is, well, if we have evidence, like in that experiment, with some species and some conditions had some results, is it just gives us one little piece of the puzzle. They can be influenced. And to that I say, of course they are. Everything is nature and nurture. Nature as in genetic, or nurture as in like environmental, right? So like we are all affected by not just our genetics, our building blocks, like our recipe for how to make a mantis, right? We're also affected by the things that happen to us externally. So don't draw a line in the sand because that doesn't make any sense. Okay, we have a piece of evidence that shows us some of the information that, hey, these are somewhat influenced by the environment. Of course they are, everything is, but this is how. That's what the paper says. It doesn't say there are no morphs. That doesn't say that. And it doesn't conclude that, right? There's no way to say that when we have very simply, I have 200 subadult ghosts right now in totes, all kept exactly the same with the exact same conditions, and they are every single color. I have black ones, red ones, orange ones, gold ones, brown ones, a weird gray one that I can't describe, and hopefully it's not sick. And then I have like black, was it green ones? Yeah, some green ones and yellow ones. All different kinds of colors, morphs, which is just, a morph is just a word that we're using to describe, and what we call in the Mantis trade, or we're starting to call it a morph, is just the adult final molt coloration. Period. As we observe it. Okay? So they do change as they molt. They all do. But we are starting to see patterns where, through our tracking and our notes, that we can tell, based on what instar they are, or larval stage they are, that in mantids, by the way, have an incomplete metamorphosis. They don't have a true larval state, but they are little larval versions of the adults. It's still proper to say L, not I. And that's for reasons that an emophagist would tell you, someone who studies insects and human history, which, by the way, let's stay true to tradition and keep it as an L, because the people that came before us, like Linnaeus, would have us do. That is what's proper, right? We would follow what the entomologists did before us. It is not improper. It is proper because it's politically proper, and we're respecting the emophagy, the relationship between human beings and insects. That's an emophagist. It's emophology. I hope I'm saying that right, but I've never met one, but that's where that L2I2 comes from. Ancient keeping habits, or practices of like beekeeping. That's what an emophagist would study. And part of our history and our culture is like we use L for things like mantids and I for things like spiders. Anyway, just one more point. But what I was talking about is like with the colorations of the mantids, all we're doing is writing the adult final molt coloration noted. Point, period, right? So what I can see is like if I had someone come to me the other day and say, Kevin, I got one of your nymph. It's turned out to be an adult green female. I'm like, oh, great. And they're like, what color was the mom and dad? I said, okay, hold on. Give me the batch number. So we have cute little batch numbers that we do within our society, which is the Society for Ethical Breeding and Conservation of Mantids, which means it's just a project where we're all breeding together and doing this genealogy tracking and just noting what we see, right? It's really simple. We use a scientific method. We have a hypothesis, or we're just documenting through good science. We're not being lazy scientists. We're just writing down what we see in our observations, and we're looking at evidence, right? It's a good baseline for experimentation where you have a testable hypothesis, and we look for, with a control, we run an experiment, and then we have data and evidence to support our theories, right? That's how science works. But anyway, good note taking. And what I'm noting and seeing, I said, okay, well, you got a green adult female. Let me go look at, give me your batch number. Okay, female number 11. Mom was green, dad was brown. Cool. That's all we're saying. Mom was green, dad was brown, yours was green. Not too surprising. What we think we know, right, is a piece of information, but that doesn't mean we draw a line in the sand and say, it's not genetic. Well, everything is genetic. We know that through like evolution, right? We already talked about the gene pool. We know what's happening naturally and not naturally. They're not going sibling to sibling. That's not happening. That doesn't even make sense. And we should always try to replicate what's happening in the wild. And there's a reason a strong, diverse, like a strong genetic group or group genetically, right, has a diverse gene pool, means that they're more likely to adapt, survive things like disease. When we breed inward, then we make them susceptible to those things, all right? There's no arguing that. It's the theory of evolution, right? Survival of the fittest, where the most diverse are apt to adapting and survive, and the weakest die, which is called natural selection, right? In captivity, it's line breeding when we breed inward for desirable traits or just to see what'll happen. And then obviously too, when we're trying to breed outwardly, we're just trying to keep a stronger genetic stock, less susceptible to something like disease or decay, right? So that's all we're doing. Taking mantids that come in, we're lucky enough to get them because I'm not getting on a plane going through millions of miles of red and green tape to go collect a specimen that I want to work with in captivity, get it here. It's impossible. The fact is we got it. It's here. It's in front of us. There's a kind of a chance that we know about that wherever it came from could be getting bulldozed right to the ground, and we'll probably never see it again. And there's about 100 times that I've seen a mantis once and never saw it again. It's kaput. It's gone. And we didn't work hard enough to try to keep it. So that being said, we can do a little bit better of a job if we just act a little more sustainably to do something we know is in the interest of the mantis, that also we know is not happening in the wild. You can't argue that it is. It's silly and it's ridiculous. To say that you shouldn't breed black, well, it's not, and it's not that much work. It's not as much work as you think. We only write down like 3 key events: the mating, the ooth, the hatching, and then those are assigned a batch number that we create using our little methodology, our little system. And then we just attach that to the cup. And that's it. That's the whole batch system. So now we know where it came from and whatever we wanted to note about the adults. It's easy. And then now we don't breed sibling to sibling when we can help it. And when we have the opportunity to, and we get new mantids, we can try to keep them there, because I've been doing this a long time, 16 years. Where I've been working with just the more exotic ones, and I've seen a lot of really cool ones just disappear, and I'm sick of it. And I'm also sick of, like something I've always, what do I do when I'm trying to push something? Somebody's gonna text me this. I got 2 people watching that can hopefully help me. What's the word for someone who looks out for someone else's best interest? Advocate. I'm an advocate. So I advocate for mantids, right? Sorry, it's been a long night. I advocate for mantids and more sustainable keeping because we can. And it doesn't mean you should or have to. Do whatever you want. I don't care if your mantids grow a third eye or they crash after a few years, or they're so sensitive that the minute you ship them to somebody else, they all die. I don't know what the consequences are, but we can guess what they might be, and we can also just treat them sustainably if we actually cared about them and not just looking to make a quick buck, right? Been doing this a long time. I've been advocating and teaching. Go look on YouTube, type in Moonlight Mantids. I've been doing this a really long time, and probably much, much longer, because I'm not going to stop, okay? So I'm a constant in the mantis world, and I'm sorry you don't like it. Hopefully you do, because I'm here to be your friend, especially if you like mantids, but I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to use the scientific method, my education, my experience and background, to see what I can learn. And I learn something new all the time. And I put these pieces together all the time, especially from people that are coming and are brand new into the trade. But the thing is, say like you're in my Discord now, or you joined in here with us, you don't know anything about us, but you're coming into this really tight-knit group. We're really cool and we're really happy to have you, but also like, you're like, why are they so close? Why do they know everything that they're talking about? Is this, that? But then also you're going in with some apprehension. You're using your authority, if you're already someone who's experienced in mantids, authority as in like your experience, right? To try to help someone, and that's not wrong. But if you're an outsider, we don't know who you are, and you see how things can kind of seem a little authoritative, you know what I mean, in a sense that it literally is, but it can be misconstrued, especially if you're like a stranger, we don't know your methods. And also be mindful in this Discord, and this video is literally just for that, is that we do not shut down how somebody else is doing something, right? Especially if they're in a different part of the country, different climate, different means. So we don't shut that down. And we only ask or give advice when it's asked. We share what we're doing, what I'm doing. It's up to you what you do. right? Because what works for you may not work for others. It may not be possible for others. And there is no for sure way. All that we know is, if you use the scientific method, is what we think we know. We don't know anything. There's no such thing as a fact. We just have evidence to support our theories, right? And we try to work together, which we invite you all to do, to try to get answers to those things so we can do something like work together to keep mantids in trade. Personally, I'm sick of losing the ones that are really, really cool and hoping and praying they come back, but I can't breed them all. I'm not like Ash Ketchum, right? I can't keep them. I can't catch them all. Can't breed them all. I want to, and I try, and I have been, and I'm always wearing myself out trying. I wear myself out advocating. I wear myself out taking care of my community and their needs and developing my new keepers, which I've done for well over a decade, getting closer to 2, and all the work it takes to feed, breed, and take care of these things. And I love them a lot. And I'm excited to learn what you all have to offer. Please give everyone here the time of day, the respect they deserve. We do not say or speak in a way that we know something, but rather we say, what I observed was blah. What did you see? You know what I mean? See the difference there versus this is what you do. Well, this is what I would do, but that looks okay. Did that work? Where are you at? What's the climate there? What are, you know what I mean? What are, you know, and you don't have to ask like, what are your means, but, you know, don't assume, right? So if we're going to be in this Discord, we're going to work on mantids, we're going to be close, we're going to be buddies. We need to be mindful of our backgrounds, what our intentions are, what our intent is. Ours is we are working on a project, and you're invited to join, of course, hang out with us, and the camaraderie there is great. We're very tight-knit. I implore you to join us and to take the time to get to know us. I'm Kevin. It was nice talking to you guys.